Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the Eclypsium Product Roadmap. My name is Melissa Russell, and I will be your host and moderator for today. Just before we begin, I did want to just address how we will handle the Q&A. If you do have any questions at all during the session, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A box, and we will save some time towards the end to address your questions. If for any reason we run out of time, we will definitely follow up with any questions that we don't have time to answer, so please go ahead and throw them in. At this time, I am joined by Corey Bodson. He is our Chief Product Officer here at Eclypsium. And at this time, the floor is all yours. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. And again, I'm Corey Bodson, Chief Product Officer here at Eclypsium. And welcome to our first ever public roadmap webinar. Let's get this started. But before we do, little worries, right? Safe harbor statement. We're going to talk about futures, which means these are all plans. They're not commitments. They might be subject to change. Also, we know there were several people interested in joining some of our competitors, which welcome if you found a way on. But this is solely for our customers. So any screenshotting or sharing or distribution without a written permission is prohibited. But then enough for the lawyerese. Let's move on to the fun stuff, which is food. Anybody who's ever seen a presentation from me knows I can't do things without talking about food, that I'm addicted to all things gluten, pasta, tortillas, and bread. They're three of my favorite things to make. I love the fact that they're all just three simple things. You got flour, salt, and eggs, you get pasta. Swap out the eggs for lard, you can do tortillas. And yes, you do need lard for tortillas. You can swap out the lard for yeast and you get bread. Three, right? You're going to hear the number three a lot in this presentation. And that really frames the agenda for today, right? If I really boil it down to its simplest, on the roadmap, we're going to talk about three things: what's now, what's next, and what's in the future. So with that, let's start with now. Since this is our first public roadmap webinar, normally what we would do is we would talk about, hey, here's what we covered last time, here's what we said we do, blah, blah, blah. But we haven't done that yet. This is the first one. So we're going to jump right into our 3.5 release, which is actually rolling out this morning in limited availability to select customers and partners. We're targeting general availability in a week or two. I'll talk more about our release cycles later as we address and gather any feedback and such. But prior to that, I want to go over some of the highlights of our 3.5 release. First and foremost, one of the things I'm really proud of is that we've released our new Criminal Justice Information Systems Security Policy Report, which is a tremendous mouthful. So I'm just going to call it CJIS. That's what we call it internally. It provides both an at-a-glance UI that I'm showing here, as well as downloadable PDF or CSV if you want to do that to yourself reports. And this allows you to really quickly, for the assessors, auditors who've got in your environment, demonstrate the state of your CJIS compliance. And if you have any items that need attention, lets you quickly see what they are and get to them. We have completely reimagined our asset details pages, starting with network devices, with a new organization, new information that really highlights things you can see among the top, right? Good firmware reputation, indicators of compromise, etc. Truthfully, it's largely the same information we had in the past, but we believe it's organized in a better way that lets you really immediately understand the state of your network assets. We're pretty excited about this one, very interested in feedback, but assuming the feedback goes as positively as we expect, you will actually see this UI rolling into other asset types in the future. I'll talk a little bit later about some of the dependencies there. We're really proud of our partnership with Intel. Yuri and Pat Gelsinger were able to get together and give a talk and a keynote together a couple of months ago. And one of the things we're working really closely with them on is our transparent supply chain effort. That's their program they're running. For devices that support Intel's transparent supply chain, TSC, and today that's largely Lenovo, they're kind of leading edge on that. We'll provide some really specific information on the integrity of the system, right? We'll let you know about the platform data. We'll let you know about the platform certificate. We'll help you feel assured that the laptop you received in this Lenovo case is in the same shape, untampered with perfect integrity from the way it was when it left the factory. And that's just plays into everything we do in the supply chain. There's a bit of information we collect on every asset that we've heard from our customers. It's really important for them to understand how things are configured, whether they're following best practices. Be it things like, do you have secure boot enabled, or do you have DMA protection on? We display this information on the asset page down in the details, but in 3.5, we thought it would be really helpful to give you a new security configurations page that shows everything in a single view, including your most common configuration issues, lists of impacted assets that you can drill down to and really get to make valuable use of that information. The dashboard is the first and probably the most important thing you see in our platform. We released a new dashboard a release or two ago. So we've gotten a lot of feedback from our customers, from our sales team, from our partners, and we've spent time to kind of take that feedback and work to improve the user experience. We made a ton of changes, actually more than I'm going to list here, but I figured I'd just call out a couple of highlights that were really key from customer feedback we received. We added back in filtering, made it easy to switch between device types or the groups that you've configured when you want to see the data and the charts according to what you care about. On those donut charts, we added clickable drill down so that you don't only see where you're at, but you can immediately get to the details you need to take action. So we think these are really nice UI changes. We hope you feel the same and are really excited to hear your feedback as we continue to iterate on our workflows. Lastly, this isn't really software release version specific, but we do have a constant drumbeat of new coverage that we're releasing. And I got to tell you, the first quarter of 2024 has given us quite a bit of excitement, right? We have logo fail, Pixie fail, all the fun that poor Avanti is going through with Pulse Secure, Shim Shady, VMware vulnerabilities. The list goes on and on. I'm happy to say we've been able to add coverage for every one of those. Every week we create new coverage content, which then we provide in updates to the platform. We do that because we know that you need this information. You need to know what's breaking. You need to know what the state of your infrastructure is in your supply chain and where you need to lean in. And so we're excited about how we've been able to keep pace in Q1. And honestly, we expect to accelerate our pace of content development throughout the next year. So those are some, but not all, of the highlights in the 3.5 release. It's a lot to cover in a single release, but we think that's the pace of innovation you as our customers expect, and of course what we're striving for. So now I want to talk a little bit about what we're planning for the coming quarter of 2024. Before I get into the specifics of what we're doing, let me talk a little bit about how we work. And for each release, we have three steps that we go for. First, we plan, right? We talk to our customers, we listen to the field, we evaluate emerging market needs, changes in the environment. And we stack rank everything that we should be considering. We actually start this before we start the release cycle. So we've been doing this for 3.6 for the past couple of weeks, locking down with our product and engineering teams exactly what we think we can do and which things we should do. Next, we move into the build phase, right? As an agile engineering team, we work in sprints. We allocate 4 2-week-long sprints to actually doing the building, the testing, and the hardening of our software. We actually started the first of our 4 sprints for 3.6 yesterday morning. So we're just getting rolling right now on building what's going to be in 3.6. And so then in roughly 8 weeks, we're going to move into our last phase, which is the launch phase. Now, we work with our customer sponsors. I'll hear more about that later, to get them maybe early access, or as we are with 3.5, get them in limited availability access. Once we've had a little bit of time to get feedback, a little operational production experience, we generally quickly move right into general availability. So in the case of 3.6, since we did planning a couple of weeks ago, we've just started yesterday, our build phase, we expect to move towards the launch and the release of limited availability mid to late May. I think May 17th is the targeted date right now. So that's how we work. Now that we've covered how we work, let's talk exactly about what we're going to do in the 3.6 and maybe 3.7 release. All right, there is a lot on this slide, and I apologize for the micro fonts, but take it in. As you can see, we're focusing on, surprise, 3 key themes. Our first is infrastructure, AI, and IoT support. Our second is extensible assessment and analysis. And then third, something we're calling illuminate, educate, and remediate. Truthfully, there is a fourth here, just like how technically you need the 4th ingredient of water in each of those foods I talked about. But that's platform initiatives, and just like water, it's something we kind of take for granted. We do that every quarter. We allocate some portion of our engineering capability to maturity, to bug fix, to maintenance, et cetera. So that one's always there in addition to the 3 themes. Now, I'm not going to read everything to you and go through each item on this, but I am going to point out a couple of the ones I think are really interesting or important. First, let me start in infrastructure, AI, and IoT, right? We know our customers come to us to get visibility into their entire infrastructure supply chain. That means supporting not just traditional clients and servers, but a lot of network devices, IoT, other infrastructure components. So you see some major initiatives there around Dell OS support for Dell networking hardware, Cisco carrier class switch support, iOS XR. And, you know, AI is on everybody's minds these days. And honestly, we're all using it. So we want to make sure we're supporting the infrastructure for AI. That includes the latest processors from NVIDIA or Intel. And we're even thinking about our role in helping you understand the supply chain and integrity of large language models you're using. In extensible assessment, right, we know that you rely on us to collect data about your entire infrastructure and then make decisions. So we think we do an awful lot out of the box. We know we'll never do everything you need, at least out of the box, which is why we want to make it extensible, both for our own purposes, so we could rapidly adopt new things, as well as for our partners and our sophisticated customers to be able to do this. So we're going to be focusing quite a bit on extensible sensors, extensible data retrieval. You'll see us using things like EMBA, which is a fantastic open source firmware assessment tool, to help us kind of stretch that extensible capability and give us more visibility into IoT devices, as an example. Then, you know, under illuminate, educate, and remediate, we know you know, You are users and the people are in the console, but you're not just using Eclypsium because it's so much fun. You're using it because you need to make sure that your infrastructure supply chain is more secure, and you work with others in your company and your key stakeholders to make that happen. So we want to add capabilities, make it easier for you to share the information you're collecting, to show people what they need to do, et cetera. That will be things like I already talked about the CGIS report. We'll be looking into creating additional controls. We are considering additional compliance reports, CMS, FFIEC, NCUA, credit union reports, for example. A good example of places we'll expand on that report capability. And most importantly, we want to make it so it's really easy to every Monday morning have a PDF show up in your stakeholders' inbox telling them, hey, here's where we're at and here's what I need you to do. So that, help drive effective, timely remediation. I will just call out a couple in platform initiatives. There's some cool stuff here. I talked about the dashboard UI updates and the new asset page we made for network devices. We're in the midst of completing some framework upgrades for those who care about the technology, moving from Ember to React. That will allow us to rapidly start improving the workflow and consistency of our user experience. We've also done some work on the back end, migrating into Kubernetes and such. We're doing that for some specific customers who have needs for DoD customers specifically around ATOs, but that's going to yield benefits for scalability, reliability, and monitoring across our platform. So a lot of really exciting stuff here. Now, what I'm going to do is pause for a minute. Let you take a look at this. If you see items I haven't talked about, you want to hear more about, if there are things that aren't on here that you want to know, now is a great time to put some questions into the Q&A panel. So I will pause for just a minute. Won't torture you by singing the Jeopardy music, but you can think about it in your head. Give you just enough time, pick things out there. And okay. What's the timpani do at the end? Boom, boom. Now we'll move along. So that's what we're working on in terms of next. And then with that, let's move into future. Now, as an agile shop, right, we work really hard to make sure that we always have the ability to respond to needs as they come up. Citrix Bleed or the Avanti Pulse Secure, great examples where we don't want to allocate 100% of our stuff and chisel into stone what we're going to work on, because if things change, you may have needs that we need to respond to quickly. But, we also don't just wait until you ask. We do have some plans, and, we assuming nothing changes. There's some things that we've heard from you that we're thinking about, that we know we want to start tackling as we get past our next 1 or 2 releases and as we get into the second half of 2024. So, shockingly, there are 3 main buckets of things that we'll be working on. Coverage, capability, and usability. So in the case of coverage, we'll continue to develop capabilities to make sure that we support the latest infrastructure and firmware. We have some really strong partnerships with important companies like Intel, Lenovo, Panasonic, Dell, you name it, that we'll expand on. We're going to leverage the data that they share with us, the way our products can work together, things like transparent supply chain, things like working with Lenovo on country of origin and things like that. So a lot of expansion of coverage. And then I mentioned, right, Gen AI, the infrastructure, the hardware and the firmware that supports it. Of course, you look to us to do that. We also think we have a role to play in the LLM supply chain. There's a lot of large language models out there. There's a lot of question about how they work, can I rely on them, will they hallucinate, et cetera. So we think we have a role in helping you understand and trust your supply chain there. From a capability standpoint, we know there are a lot of capabilities that we need to focus on. And this really comes directly from our customers, right? Our sensors, you need more of them. They should be easier to deploy, more versatile and extensible. We've talked quite a bit about extensibility. We want to, of course, continue to be excellent in traditional networks, but we know our customers are looking to us to help them secure both public and private clouds, as well as manufacturing environments, IoT environments, et cetera. And then there are a lot of enterprise capabilities we know you're looking for, whether it is more robust scan scheduling, more granular role-based access control, things like that. So we'll look into those sorts of capabilities to make sure that we fit really neatly into the way you need to work. Then finally, under usability, as I mentioned, especially with the completion of that React migration, we're going to improve our UX so that you can get exactly what you need. And it should be really easy. Whenever you're in our console, you should never be more than a click or two away from what you need to know. But we recognize that you do a lot of work and other screens as well, right? I'm not a big fan of that term single pane of glass. There aren't any, at least I haven't been any in the 30 years I've been in this industry. So we want to make sure if you love using Tableau or Splunk or what have you, that you can get our data there. Heck, it can even be Excel. I do that all the time. We know that you may use us and our automated firmware updates, but you probably also have other remediation and mitigation systems that we should integrate easily with. So we're thinking a lot about who those partners are and where we should integrate. All things we'd love to hear more from you. So if you have ideas, we'll get to how you get those to us in a minute. One thing I conspicuously skipped is at the very beginning. We have some really cool, I'm calling them advanced detections internally. We call it Project Coconut. I promised marketing I wouldn't scoop them because this is a big part of our RSA conference effort. So just consider this a teaser, but it's a great segue into RSA, right? That's 5 weeks away. We will be there. You will see a lot of cool stuff. Some of the things I talked about we're doing in 3.6, some stuff we've already released in 3.5 that we want to do a proper launch for, and maybe some surprises as well. So if you are going to RSA, I believe, Melissa will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're booth 226 in the South Hall. I think I'll be out there. A bunch of our staff will be out there, people much smarter and better looking than me. So definitely, if you're there, swing by. So if you really want sneak peeks and to be in the know even before big launches like this, I want to point you back to something I mentioned before, our customer sponsor program. I talked a bit about how we work, and customer sponsor program, that's the way we actually embed your voice into what we do, right? When we're planning, we work closely with customer sponsors to understand, hey, what problems do you have? What are your needs? How can we help? What's it like using our product? Where's it good? Where's it bad? You help us with that prioritization. Then when we move into building, we've got wireframes, we've got user stories, we have development prototypes. We love getting real end user feedback about, yeah, this looks great, I can't wait for it. Or, I think you guys are missing the mark. Let me show you what it's like to use your product and what I really need here. And then, of course, when we're finished with releasing, we're ready for launch, when we do early access for beta versions, or if it's just limited availability like we have with 3.5, you get to be the first ones to have it, which makes you the cool kids on the block. You also, again, help us just make sure that in a real production environment, everything works as well as we think it does. And of course, you can help us spread the word about how great some of our new capabilities are. So if you have time, because it is a little bit of a time commitment, but if you have the time and the interest, we'd love for you to join. So you can either reach out to your customer success manager, or you can email us at info@eclypsium.com. So that's everything. Truthfully, you've probably had enough of the number 3 to last you for the rest of the year, but thank you for indulging me. And thank you for attending this roadmap. We're going to do more of these in the future. Next time you get to hear from some other members of our product team. We're tentatively thinking we'll probably do this quarterly. So it's probably going to be in June, but again, use that info at eclypsium.com. We'd love your feedback on the content, if this was helpful, Was it long enough? Did we cover enough? How frequently we should do it, et cetera. So definitely reach out and don't hesitate. With that, I think we got just a couple of questions. So let's tackle them. First, I'm going to start with Jeff. Jeff asks, what are the best ways for customers and users to give feedback on products and services? That is a great question, and of course, playing to one of my favorites. So there are a bunch of ways, right? That info at Eclypsium, you can always just email us. We, as a product team, we try to make sure we are available to customers all hours of the day. So if there's something you really want to talk about, you can reach out to your account manager, you can reach out to your customer success manager. When you're talking with them, they will happily arrange to summon the product team to show up, listen, give you some insight on what we're doing, et cetera. So that's another great way. And then I didn't list this because it's still early, but I am a firm believer in having capabilities inside the product to allow you to give us some immediate feedback. We're almost certainly going to do our first NPS survey where not only will we solicit a rating, but we'll also ask for a simple one-liner on some things we can do better. So we're always trying to find a way to be available. If nothing else, if there's something you really want to talk about, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I promise I will respond. So great question, Jeff. Thank you. Okay, our next question is from Mark. Mark says, do you ever plan to integrate NAC type features into your client that would allow us to isolate devices that are not compromised or way out of our compliance standard? I love that question, Mark. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, but we need to figure out how. So let me talk a little bit about that, right? And I mentioned this in kind of our longer term thinking about remediation. Sometimes when a device has a problem, right, secure boot is off, you can see that in Eclypsium, we tell you exactly how to fix it. Great. Sometimes, you know, the firmware is out of date, it's vulnerable to pixie fail. We can help you get that updated with automated firmware updates. Sometimes, especially as we push into IoT or if you're on a manufacturing network, if it's a medical device with embedded OS stuff, sometimes patching, changing is not possible or even allowed. And so you're looking for mitigating or compensating controls. That's where we think we have a great remediation story. And in fact, we do talk with people about how we can be an important pillar of a zero trust architecture. There are a lot of companies that already do this. So I think we're uniquely positioned to help you understand if you can really rely on the integrity of the device and know it's clean. But then there are products like Zscaler that may want to pick up that posture information from us and use it to say, oh yeah, you know, this system is in great shape. I let it do everything. This other system I know has some vulnerable firmware. Eclypsium has detected some really sketchy binaries on it. And so as a result, I'm going to block it from access to Salesforce or my GitHub, but I will allow it access to the internal corporate shares where they can get patches or remediation tools. So we think that's the right way to integrate. Would love to hear from our customers. Their zero trust seems to be a very, very common concept, but with a heavily varied implementation. So if you're Zscaler, if you're Palo Alto, if you're something else, if you think we should integrate with EDR tools like CrowdStrike or SentinelOne, or if you want other integrations, let us know. We're still gathering information to see the best way to do it. But if I had to boil it down, we know we have enough data and an API architecture that should let us integrate with the tools you use. And it's really mostly a matter of figuring out how we make that seamless and effective for you. It's a great question. Thank you, Mark. Anonymous asked a question. Can you talk about analysis performance enhancements? That's a great question. I don't know who you are, Anonymous, but thank you for that. So Eclypsium, one of our unique core competencies is that we actually, we're not like a vulnerability scanner for example, that's just looking for file versions or things. We're not like a reversing labs, for example, where we just have a hash and no bad stuff. And by the way, I love those products. I've worked at lots of VM companies. I love what they're doing at reversing labs. So that is not a diss on them. But what we do that goes a little bit above and beyond that, we think is important and others don't do, is we do really deep analysis. We decompile, we look for patterns, we look for strange behaviors. We'll look in the UFI and say, hey, it's writing to the NTFS file system. There's no reason for anybody to do that. We think there's a problem here. And so that sort of analysis takes time and takes effort. Time and effort to a human, I mean, it takes us a couple of seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds to do. No, that's amazingly fast for me as a human, but it's amazingly slow when you're an Eclypsium customer who expects to scan hundreds of thousands of devices every day. So we are doing a bunch of work to improve the performance of some of our advanced analysis. If you want to learn more, reach out to info@eclypsium.com. You need somebody way smarter than me. Maybe somebody like a Danielle Goodson can tell you about it. But we are doing some optimizations in our code. But then we're also doing just some architecturally smart things. Like, hey, when we see something, take a quick hash of it. If we know we've seen it before, look it up as opposed to doing the analysis. If we've been given 1,000 new things on a system we've never seen before, let's be nice and only try to tackle a handful of them, and the next scan will tackle more, et cetera. So those are the kind of analysis the kind of performance enhancements we're making to make sure that we can do as much and as deep an analysis as you expect, but do it in a responsible way that doesn't cause problems in your production environment. So thank you for that. That's a great question. Mark has, I think, is a follow-up on that, asking, what about IDS, IPS type pattern detections to prevent exploits of vulnerabilities client has found? That's a great question, Mark. We do those already today. Those tend to be lightweight. There's a reason why IDS and IPS didn't really succeed much as a category. They're really good at telling you about old stuff. They're not so good at telling you about new things. There is a role for them, right? And so we do support them in our detection engine, that Project Coconut we're going to talk about. But we also do so much more. We look for heuristics. We look, as I said, when we decompile and we find patterns that are suspicious or behaviors that are suspicious, we think those, while harder to do, also provide much more accurate findings. IDS and IPS are fast and easy, but they also tend to be lower confidence because they have much higher false positive and false negative rates. So ultimately, and now I'm really going far on into the future, ultimately, we know you as the customer will probably want to make the decision on how to tune that balance between false positive, false negative, and performance. And you'll probably want to do it not on an implementation basis, but maybe even on a group by group or device by device basis. We have architectural work to do to let us get there, but that would be consistent with at least my last 15 plus years in this space. That there tends to be a path of, we make groups, we make sure they're dynamic and match up what your business needs are. We make sure to apply access control to them so that you can share just the information you want. And then the final step is we normally allow you to tune behaviors on those groups according to what's appropriate. Really high security, high trust things, you may want to over-rotate on really deep analysis and be okay with more false positives to make sure you have 0 false negatives. Other environments you may not care as much about, and you may tune more for performance and scale and make different trade-offs. So that's a very long-term path we'll walk. Truthfully, those are not likely 2024 capabilities, but those are the ways we're thinking. So great question there. Thank you for that. All right, that's a handful of questions asked and answered. I'm going to pause a minute in case anybody has any follow-up questions while we are waiting. So if you have them, get them in there in the QA panel. But again, I just want to extend a thank you to everybody. Thank you for attending. Thank you for the questions. Hopefully this was valuable. let us know. We'll reach out. But if nothing else, we'll do this again in a couple of months. So with that, I think we're wrapped. I will say thank you. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you again, everybody, and thank you, Corey.
Thanks.